meditate for and to note. Moving on from that, I said this, that sci-fi is almost always political in some way, because the author can write it in an alternate reality setting, which means that the writer can get at things that are bugging us in our ordinary everyday without triggering people, without making people upset, because she's talking about this other world. And so Collins does something where she does, we as students of literature call it social commentary. You're going to make comments on the society in which you and your readers live, but you're going to do it through fiction in a way that makes them sit back and be like, huh, I wonder why that is, instead of in a way that makes them, like wave protest flags and get upset. And so there's some very clear elements of social commentary that come through the Hunger Games as well. So I would say the first is wealth disparity. The people in the capital have everything. The people in District 12 have nothing. Why is that? Why are people starving to death while people in the capital eat so much food that they have to make themselves vomit, which happened in Rome, actually. There was a place called the Vomitorium. We could talk about it, but I don't want to. But they eat so much food that they take a drug to make them vomit so then they can eat more food while people are starving in another district. Collins is asking, why does that happen? And she's not asking, why does that happen in Pan Am? She's asking, why does that happen in the world? Why are there places where there's famine and children are lying with distended bellies and flies buzzing around them, while people in other countries, go out to dinner and get more than they could possibly eat and leave it on the plate. This is sort of one of the central commentaries of the Hunger Games. And it's not just hunger. Obviously, that's in the title, so it's a big deal. But you can also look at the wealth, what people have in the capital versus what people have in the districts. And when you talk about, control and rebellion, going back to one of your themes, you can look at the way that the government uses the disparity of wealth to pit people against each other. They pit districts against each other in the Hunger Games. So they're not fighting against the capital, they're fighting against each other. Within the districts, you've got like the mayor's family and the people that are rich, like Katniss's mom growing up, versus the people in the scene who are poor, and they pit them against each other. And so, there's all of these various levels of disparity in which people are vying against each other, but never in a unified way against the capital, which is what they're trying to avoid. Next, I would say there's a social commentary on the excesses of city life. Collins, and I like that her social commentary is sometimes on the conservative side and sometimes on the liberal side. Last one, liberal side. This one, the conservative side. You go into the city and, so I guess Collins is sort of even-handed. But anyway, you go into the capital, and these people are, dressing like animals with implantations and living all sorts of crazy, decadent, from Katniss's perspective, depraved sort of lifestyles, and this is sort of a permissive society that lets people do whatever they want. And this is, the danger of that permissive society, according to Collins. So she's looking at the excesses of city life, and she's obviously got like Hollywood and, big cities in her sights and taking shots at that in American society, and you can see that. Next, like reality TV and entertainment. The Hunger Games is a reality TV show. It just so happens that people die on it. They just don't get voted off the island or something. So she's exaggerating the downsides of reality TV throughout the course of this story, and I think that becomes an important element as well. And you can stretch it to entertainment in general. Sure, we don't kill people on live TV and watch it, but we have video games where we kill people all the time. And movies, you ever watch an action movie where people don't die all the time? Or maybe they're not real deaths, maybe they're stage deaths, but we pretend they're real. It's called suspension of disbelief. What do you think this book is, right? And so the idea of the desensitization towards violence in our society and towards other people's emotions through reality TV, I think that's, definitely something that Collins is trying to point at and make us consider by having us, metaphorically watch the Hunger Games through her book. And what does it say that the thing became an international bestseller? And it's not just, we have other forms of reality TV. We have, whether it's sporting events. Like, you ever watch a football game where somebody breaks a leg? How many times they show you the leg breaking in slow motion? People love it. It's weird. And Collins wants you to wonder why. Think about it. Consider these things. And then the next one would be, I'd say, distrust of the government. The government of Panem is corrupt. Everything they tell you is a lie. They're trying to manipulate you to control you. They're getting fat off of your work if you're in one of the districts. And, this is, a resonant point that's more on the conservative side of the spectrum that Collins is putting out there. Distrust of the government. Look at why things are the way they are and how they're happening. Now, obviously, our government is not Panem. We don't have the same sort of systems in place, but she's using the exaggerated nature of the story to write political commentary about the situation of the United States when the book was published. So, you could see some threads through here that's typical sci-fi used to activate political ideologies and push them and make you reconsider them and think about them, so that when you come away from the book, you come away changed, and that's what authors do. All right, this is getting long. We're already at 19 minutes. I do have one last set of things I want to talk about that I think are important. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to this lecture, you're going to see that there's a lot of allusions in the Hunger Games, and particularly to Greek and Roman society, and you can see them all over the place. We mentioned the Avoxes. These are slaves. Romans had slaves. Slaves were a big part of Roman society. We've got the Hunger Games. It's clearly a coliseum where people fight to the death. It's just on TV instead of in front of a bunch of crowds. And, in ancient Rome, you had these gladiators, and the gladiators that won became champions, and they were famous, and some of them even won their freedom and became famous members of society. This happens in the Hunger Games. Haymitch is the only champion from District 12. You meet him relatively early on. Chariot races were big in Rome, but before every games in Rome, people got in chariots and paraded around the arena. That happens here. Then you've got, Panem being Latin for bread, and you could tie it into bread and circus and that sort of Roman idea. That's definitely there. Take a look at the names of people in the capital. Seneca, Caesar, Plutarch, Venia, Flavius. They're all Roman names. So clearly we're making a reference to Rome and a Roman decadence and Roman society. And, that's in your face. It's very hard to miss. And then, of course, there's Greek allusions as well. It's pretty easy to tell, after our Greek mythology unit, that this story is based in large part on Theseus and the Minotaur. You remember Theseus and the Minotaur? In ancient Athens, they lost a war with the Minoans in Crete, and King Minos, he had that hideous Minotaur son living in the labyrinth. And so as a punishment to Athens for losing the war, he demanded that Athens send him 14 children. I don't know if it was every year. I think it was every year. 7 boys and 7 girls, and they'd be fed to the Minotaur in the labyrinth. Panem, there's 12 districts, so you're looking at 12 boys and 12 girls being sent to the Hunger Games to die every year, and it's Theseus who breaks that cycle. And here we have Katniss. Ends with an S? No, I don't really think that's anything. But the whole point of this is that there's a lot of connections between Greek and Roman culture and the culture written into the Hunger Games. And that's, is that making some connection between modern day United States and Greek and Roman culture? Sure, I think it is. Maybe that's another avenue of the social commentary to bring attention to, our cultural thirst for gore and blood in video games and movies, maybe our lack of empathy for people around the world who are starving. Our addictions to sports and stuff like that. And so, Collins is doing some interesting things with her allusions, and our job as students is to take the book and to look at it and say, hey, what is the author doing? How is she utilizing these elements, such as illusion or symbolism? We didn't even talk about Katniss and her dreams and how they're symbolic of what's going on in her life. Pay attention to that. But how do they use these elements in social commentary and themes to bring across a message to the reader? And what is the author's message? Remember, one of the points of this class is to be able to step out of a book instead of just reading it as a reader reading a book to enjoy it. We still like to do that. I do that. I hope you do that. But to read the book from a different level. Like, change the focus on that microscope and see how the author wrote it and what the author is trying to make you think about and consider as you read it, and how this book is designed to change your view on the world and to change you as a result of your interaction with it. Being able to understand those things gives you that layer of critical thinking that will help you to avoid being, tricked and manipulated in the real world, but will also help you to understand sort of the roots of why things are being said to you, whether they're political messages or advertisements on TV or your mortgage paperwork or, like whatever it happens to be. So I know we're just reading The Hunger Games and it's fun and hopefully you're enjoying it, but there's like bigger, longer term things that come out of this that are really useful to you in your education moving forward if you take it seriously, if you stop and you take yourself out of reading the book for fun and read the book as a student of literature to understand the meaning that the author put there for you. I think that's everything. This is going to be in 2 installments too, because